The rope burned through Alara Finch's skin as the horse dragged her across the prairie. Not fast. Not merciful.
Shadow knows what you've done.
Slow enough for every
was an
stone to be
accident, I
counted,
swear.
every breath to hurt.
Accident or not,
The land was
it
split and
changes
dry.
everything.
The earth cracked open
What
by
do
a
you
sun
mean?
that had long stopped caring who lived or died upon it. Dust filled her mouth. Her dress, once pale, once whole, hung in torn strips around her legs. One shoe was gone. The other slapped uselessly against her ankle with every jolt. Blood streaked her calf where the rope had bitten deep, mixing with dirt until pain became something dull and distant. She was 22 years old. And she was still alive, barely. Alara no longer screamed. Screaming had ended miles ago, swallowed by fear and heat and the steady, patient cruelty of the pull. Her body had learned something her mind refused to accept: no one was coming. The prairie did not rush. The sky did not flinch. The horse's hooves struck the ground with the same rhythm, again and again, as if this were ordinary work. Her crime had not been theft. She hadn't struck anyone. She hadn't even spoken aloud. She had listened. Men talked when they believed a woman was invisible. They talked about papers signed too quickly. About cattle that changed hands without ever changing owners. About lawmen who wore badges like costumes and smiled while lying. Alara had heard one name too many. And once you knew, truly knew, there was no one knowing it. The memory returned in fragments as the world dragged past her. A slow voice behind her, calm and unbothered. A badge catching the light. A hand tightening the rope with practiced ease. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Her vision blurred. The sun smeared into white fire. Her chest rattled when she breathed, shallow and broken. One more pull sent pain flaring through her hip, sharp enough to steal the last of her strength. Alara's fingers scraped uselessly at the dirt, then stilled. Just before darkness took her completely. A shadow fell across her body. At first, she thought it was him again. Her muscles locked in terror. Her heart kicked weakly against her ribs. She waited for the rope to tighten, for the final drag that would finish what had been started. It didn't come. Instead, there was stillness. The wrong kind. The kind that didn't belong out here. A man stood over her, blocking the sun. Tall. Broad-shouldered. His coat was dust-worn, his hat pulled low, his face marked by years rather than anger. Jonah Hale. 51 years old. A former lawman who no longer wore a badge, but still carried its weight. He didn't curse. He didn't shout. He didn't panic. That calm unsettled her more than cruelty ever had. Jonah knelt slowly, like sudden movement might break something already fragile. His eyes went first to the rope, then to her leg, then to the way her chest barely rose. He drew a knife, not fast, not threatening, and slid one steady hand beneath her ankle to keep it from twisting wrong. Alara's lips trembled. The words scraped out of her like splinters. "Don't take me back." Jonah didn't answer right away. Hooves sounded faintly in the distance. Not close. Close enough. He cut the rope carefully. Once. Twice. The fibers fell away, leaving raw skin and silence in their place. Jonah didn't let her leg drop. He held her weight like he understood exactly how much damage carelessness could do. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and certain. "I won't." He lifted her then, firm, controlled, no hesitation, and turned away from the trail. Toward land that dipped and folded, toward cover, toward choice. Jonah Hale said nothing more as he carried her from the dust. But in that moment, without speeches or promises, he made a decision that would change both their lives. Because survival isn't rescue. It's someone choosing not to look away. Jonah Hale's ranch sat where the land seemed to forget itself. No road sign pointed toward it. No fence stood straight. The house leaned slightly into the wind, its boards bleached gray by years of sun and dust. One cottonwood tree guarded the yard, its leaves whispering even when there was no breeze. It was the kind of place people passed without noticing, and that was exactly why Jonah had chosen it. quiet had once felt like safety. Jonah brought Alara inside without ceremony. He set her down gently on a narrow bed in the spare room and stepped back, giving her space as if it belonged to her. He brought water. A clean cloth. He cleaned the rope burns slowly, checking her breathing more than her wounds. He didn't ask her name. He didn't ask what she had done. He didn't ask why she was running. That restraint mattered more than kindness ever could. Alara lay still, staring at the ceiling beams while her body shook in waves she couldn't control. Pain settled deep in her leg, hot and constant. Fear lingered longer. Fear always did. But something else crept in too, confusion. Men usually wanted answers. Control. Gratitude. Jonah wanted none of that. He sat in a chair near the window, watching the yard like trouble might rise from the dirt itself. The silence between them stretched, not awkward, just honest. When Alara finally spoke, it wasn't because he asked. It was because the quiet made space for truth. "I work near the saloon," she said, her voice thin. "Pouring drinks. Cleaning tables. Listening." Jonah didn't turn. "They talk," she continued. "Men always do. Especially when they think no one's worth listening to." Her fingers curled into the blanket. Words came faster now, like holding them back had cost too much. "I heard about cattle being seized that never broke a law. Warrants signed before judges ever saw them. Money changing hands in back rooms. Quiet money." Jonah's jaw tightened, just slightly. "One name kept coming back," Alara said. "Deputy Silas Crow." That made Jonah turn. He knew the name. Knew the smile that came with it. Knew how some men wore law like armor while rotting beneath it. "I didn't understand everything," Alara admitted. "But I knew it was wrong. I knew someone would get hurt." She reached into the lining of her torn dress and pulled out a folded piece of paper, creased and stained with sweat and blood. "I took this," she said. "I don't even know what it fully means. I just knew it was why they stopped smiling." Jonah took the paper and read it slowly. Too slowly. Forged seals. Rushed signatures. Orders that skipped steps no honest man would skip. This wasn't new corruption. This was organized. Jonah exhaled through his nose. "Silas Crow doesn't work alone." Alara swallowed. "There's someone else. A man he listens to." Jonah nodded once. "Calder Wren." The name settled heavy in the room. Big land. Big cattle. Clean hands. Men like Wren never touched rope or blood themselves. They paid others to do it and called it business. Jonah folded the paper and set it on the table like it might explode. "This isn't about hiding you," he said quietly. "It never was." Alara felt the weight of that truth press into her chest. "It's about whether the truth gets buried," Jonah continued. "Or whether it survives long enough to breathe." Outside, the land stayed still. No wind. No birds. Just the faint creak of the house and the sound of distance holding its breath. Quiet like that never meant safety. It meant waiting. Because silence protects the powerful. And truth always costs something. Night didn't fall at Jonah Hale's ranch. It settled. The sky dimmed slowly, turning the land the color of old iron. The last light bled out behind the hills, and the prairie went quiet in a way that felt deliberate. Jonah noticed it the same way he always had, by what stopped moving. No insects. No birds. Just stillness pressing in from all sides. The knock came then. Not loud. Not rushed. Slow. Confident. The kind of knock made by a man who believed the door would open. Alara's breath caught in the back room. Her body tensed on instinct, pain flaring sharp in her leg. Jonah didn't look toward her. He moved sideways instead of straight for the door, an old habit he hadn't thought about in years. He opened it just enough. Deputy Silas Crow stood on the porch, hat set just right, badge catching the lamplight. His smile was easy, friendly, rehearsed. The smile of a man used to being obeyed. "Evening," Crow said. "Didn't expect to find you all the way out here, Jonah." Jonah said nothing. Crow held out a folded paper. "I'm looking for a young woman. Ran off from town. Elara Finch. This here's the warrant." Jonah took it. "Read it once." The seal was wrong. The signature leaned the wrong way. "Rushed work." He handed it back. "This isn't legal," Jonah said. Crow's smile tightened. "Interfering with an arrest isn't legal either." Jonah didn't move aside. For a moment, the two men just stood there. The night thickened around them. Crow's eyes flicked past Jonah's shoulder, searching the dark behind him. "You don't want trouble," Crow said lightly. Jonah met his gaze. "Neither do you." Crow stepped forward anyway. The fight was sudden and close. No shouting. No warning. Wood cracked as their bodies slammed into the porch rail. The lantern tipped and shattered, plunging the world into darkness. A fist caught Jonah along the jaw. He took it and drove forward, using weight and balance instead of anger. Crow reached for his gun. Jonah kicked his wrist. The revolver skidded across the boards and disappeared into the dirt. They went down hard, breath knocked loose, boots scraping. Crow fought like a man used to people backing down. Jonah fought like a man who knew how to finish things without spectacle. Crow broke free first. Blood shined at his lip now, his smile gone. "This isn't over," he said, backing away. Jonah didn't chase him. Crow mounted his horse and rode off into the dark, fast enough to matter, slow enough to keep his pride intact. When the sound of hooves faded, Jonah breathed out and looked down. Something lay near the fence line, glinting faintly in the dirt. A small metal token. Heavy. Stamped with a cattle brand Jonah recognized immediately. Calderen's. Jonah closed his fist around it. Inside the house, Elara stepped onto the porch, wrapped in a blanket. She was shaking, but she was standing. "He knows," she said. "Yes," Jonah replied. "And now so does someone else." Hiding was finished. Silence was no longer an option. Because the moment you refuse to bend, the real enemy shows his face, they left before dawn. Not because the dark felt safer, but because waiting felt worse. Jonah Hale guided the horse along a low trail that followed the bends of the land instead of cutting across it. Elara rode wrapped in a coat that swallowed her frame, her injured leg stretched carefully, every movement measured. The pain was still there, deep, steady, but fear rode closer now, tightening her chest with every mile. The prairie looked peaceful in the early light. That was what made it dangerous. Jonah noticed it first. The birds lifted all at once, then vanished. The wind died. The land seemed to hold its breath. "Down," Jonah said quietly. The first shot cracked the air before Elara's boots hit the ground. Dirt exploded where they'd been a heartbeat earlier. Another shot followed, closer, sharper. No warning. No shouted command. These weren't deputies. These were hired men. Jonah pulled Elara toward a shallow creek bed, keeping his body between her and the rise where the shots came from. He didn't fire wildly. He watched. Measured. Waiting for movement instead of noise. Another shot. A rock shattered near Jonah's shoulder. Pain flared hot and sudden as something tore across his arm. He gritted his teeth and kept moving. "Don't stop," he said. "Don't look back." They moved in bursts, crawl, wait, move again, using the land the way it was meant to be used. Elara scraped her palms raw, pulling herself forward, breath trapped in her throat. Panic tried to rise. She crushed it down. The shooting slowed. Then stopped. The men had sent their message. They weren't paid to die for it. They reached the fort by mid-morning. The U.S. Marshal listened without interrupting. He studied the paper. The token. The timing. He didn't ask Elara to prove herself with emotion. He asked for facts. Patterns emerged. Clean lines. Too familiar to ignore. Silas Crow was arrested that afternoon. Calder Wren was not. Yet. Elara sat alone afterward, hands folded, knowing what came next. Testimony. Public truth. Jonah stood beside her, blood dried on his sleeve, understanding something he could not undo. His quiet life was finished. Courage hadn't ended the danger. It had invited it. Justice didn't arrive with applause. It came in a crowded courtroom that smelled of dust and old wood. It came with whispers, lowered eyes, and men who suddenly found the floor more interesting than the truth. Elara Finch stood straight when she spoke. Her voice trembled once, only once, before settling into something firm. She told them what she heard. What she saw. What was done in the name of the law. Silas Crow was convicted. The verdict landed heavy, not because it surprised anyone, but because it confirmed what too many people had chosen not to see. Crow went down alone in the official record, but everyone in that room understood the deeper truth. Calder Wren's name was spoken out loud now. Exposed. Whispered. Not yet defeated. Afterward, Elara walked out of the courthouse into the sunlight without chains, without guards, without fear snapping at her heels. She was no longer a fugitive hiding in the dust. She was a witness. She returned to Jonah Hale's ranch not because she had nowhere else to go, but because for the first time in her life, she was choosing where to stand. The days there moved slowly. Honest work. Quiet evenings. Healing that didn't rush itself. Jonah didn't try to save her. He stood beside her. He rode into town once a week, sometimes to answer questions, sometimes to remind people he was still watching. Elara stayed back, learning the rhythm of the land, mending fences, letting her strength return in ways that didn't announce themselves. They didn't speak of promises. They didn't dress courage up as romance. What grew between them was built on respect, on shared silence, on knowing neither of them had been carried through the storm. They had walked it. Elara learned something no one had ever taught her before. Strength isn't loud. It doesn't shout or threaten or wear a badge. It stays. It holds. It chooses again every morning. One honest choice changed the direction of two lives. And unsettled an entire town. If you were Jonah, would you have stayed quiet and safe, or stood up knowing it could cost you everything? Tell me in the comments. I read them. If stories like this matter to you, stories about quiet courage, hard choices, and the real Wild West, subscribe to Frontier Tales. These stories are for people who still believe choices matter.